Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. Anyone here for the first time? What's your name?
Brian.
Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
It's our tradition to go around and say our names. Please do that again. And then I'll introduce our speaker. My name is George.
Alex, Luis, Freddie, Gary, Ron, Stefan, Ricky, Emma, Andy, Garrison, Matthew, Trisha, Steve, Ernie, Michael, Ian, I'm Brad, Michael, Jack, Das, Pedro,
Noel.
And as soon as I pull it up, I introduce Mary. Mary Stares. Onryu Mary Stares first arrived at Tassajara in the summer of 2000, following a period of residential practice at Gampo Abbey in Nova Scotia, Canada. After a number of years of coming and going, she requested priest ordination, and with the request committed to live and work in residence at San Francisco Zen Center for a number of years. Mary has lived and practiced in all three of the San Francisco Zen Center temples and has lived in a number of other Buddhist communities since 1999. A Cartesian by trade, Mary was ordained as a Zen priest in 2010 by Arlene Luke and Yojin Steve Spiki. Mary was Shushin head student for the winter 2015 practice period at Tassajara. She most recently served as the director of City Center and is currently Tanto head of practice at City Center. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you all for the invitation to speak here, and for Christian, who I met at a Vimala Sangha meeting. So thank you, Christian, for the invitation to speak here. And thank you all for the pleasure and the companionship of sitting together in silence. It's kind of a rare thing, sitting in silence. I hear that when we do that, we aren't creating karma. So that's an older one of my bios from the San Francisco website. I'm not living in residence anymore at San Francisco Zen Center, although I work for them. And it's not your fault or the fault of Christian. That was pointed out that it was an old bio, so it's been changed. I'm currently working for San Francisco Zen Center on a project called Enso Village. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a seniors community in Healdsburg, partnered or kind of co-created by the Kendall Corporation, which is a Quaker organization, and San Francisco Zen Center. So those are the two partners that are working on it. And I'm doing some research around Quaker practices, and one of the things that Buddhism and Quakerism shares, I would say, is this practice of silence. So there's comfort between those two sanghas, which I'm enjoying experiencing and finding out more about this other quite unusual group of people that practice together called Quakers. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. what I wanted to talk about today is war. So I imagine it's on some of your minds, this idea of war. And it's very easy for us when we're faced with reading the news to then have lots of opinions about what's happening out there, about why we are in this place. And it seems to me that one of the differences about thinking that way, why is that happening out there, between that thought and then the thought of a practitioner, is rather than what's happening out there, what's happening in here. And it's only through what's happening in here that what is happening out there will change. Or at least that's one of the things that I think is true, and one of the things that practicing as a Buddhist has led me to hold deeply. That I cannot expect out there to change unless in here changes. There are these, they're called Kleshas, which translates, probably the easiest translation is destructive emotions. So there's a klesha, which is called aggression. And we all, I imagine, at one point or another, or even during every single day that we live, this feeling of destructive emotion arises to one degree or another. It can be very subtle. It can be very piercing. And one of the ways that it's described in the descriptions, Buddhist descriptions for aggression is like a cold, critical, cutting mind. There's not warmth there. There's not flexibility. It's extremely fixed. This aggressive mind. So it's interesting to me. There isn't in your shrine room, I don't think, a picture of Manjushri. However, Manjushri is often depicted holding a sword, which to me it's like pretty cold. A sword cuts. There's a lot of clarity in there. So I wonder what the difference is between this idea of aggression as a destructive emotion, and then the feeling of Manjushri, who's got this sword, and Manjushri is the bodhisattva wisdom. So that's kind of curious to me. And what's going on that allows those differences to be? Manjushri is usually depicted as a young man. He's never depicted as an older person. And the reason I have been taught is that wisdom is never old. Wisdom arises, it is relied upon, and then it ceases. And it turns into a new moment. There isn't this idea often of wisdom that you apply in every situation all the time. There is an idea that wisdom arises as a result of appropriate action. And that moment that you apply wisdom will never exactly happen again. So Manjushri is depicted as a young man holding a sword, which is used to bring wisdom to life. So how is this then different from this aggressive, warlike mind? And I think, for me anyway, the idea of war is relying on an action that isn't necessarily an appropriate action. A couple of weeks ago, a colleague of mine said to me, which was shocking to me, I'd like us to have a mediated conversation. I was really surprised by that because I thought our relationship was actually pretty workable. And she went ahead and asked somebody to mediate a conversation with me before she asked me if I would be interested in having that conversation, or before saying to me, I'm having some difficulties here. I found that very unpleasant, and it kind of sticks with me. This feeling of, I kind of feel that in a small scale world was an act of war. I felt like she set me up without preparation, without my input. And it wasn't a connecting conversation that we had, even around difficulty. It was being done to. So I'm thinking of this both in a very small scale and a very big scale, and the idea of war is being done to. There's not connection. And I don't know if the outcomes of war are ever, are they ever positive? I kind of don't think so. They end. And I'm not sure that ending is the same of a positive outcome. And I think that for each of us, paying attention to our own feelings of aggression is not so pleasant for us, because we want that feeling to go away. I remember one time I was quite young and I was walking down the street, and I've always looked like a lesbian. I will always look like a lesbian. And somebody yelled out of their truck, "You big dyke, go home." And that was a moment that stuck with me. I wasn't afraid that person was going to get out of his truck. I was afraid, though, I think. And I think most of the people, you individuals practicing in this room, have had an experience of that, which is an experience of war. And then what's the next thing that happens? Is the next thing that happens me responding to that person in the truck, hoping that person stops and going beating him up? Maybe, but probably not. Is that wishing that I didn't look the way I did, so that person couldn't yell that out of the window of the truck? Maybe in some instances that would be what would happen. There are so many ways to treat that particular incident. And some of them, I think that we can take care of our hearts and feel good about. And some of those times they linger and we don't feel so good about them. So this klesha, this destructive emotion, I think, is calling for us to be not only aware of it, to kind of take care of it, to be kind with ourselves around it, to acknowledge to feel, and that through that, I think there's wholeness, there's relationship created, there's kindness. So it can be a lifelong process of gently understanding the feelings we have, both brought on by ourselves and those that other people bring to us, and untangling those in a way that isn't destructive, that supports us to be gentle practitioners. And I'm not saying that this is an easy road. And as I said, I think most of us would rather not attend to these destructive emotions. Aggression being one, pride, craving, jealousy, and ignorance. I think the habit patterns that we carry mostly are inclined to skip over these feelings, these powerful feelings. And by skipping over these powerful feelings, I think we don't talk to friends any longer. We don't engage with neighbors. We don't speak across community lines or political barriers. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And working in a Sangha, living in a Sangha, allows us, I think, the support often to talk with a spiritual friend about situations that they don't maybe portray us individually in the best light. Because we're admitting that we have these destructive feelings, that we experience these emotions that we don't really like, that are uncomfortable. And that honesty allows for the situation to breathe and change. It's a little bit like keeping it caged up or opening the doors. I don't know if I think probably many of you have been practicing as long or longer than I have. I've heard that this is, or I was told, and I've read that this is a group of practitioners that have been coming here and other places for many, many years. So I am curious about what people in the group think about working with destructive emotions, particularly in a time when certainly the political landscape is full of destructive emotion. and how, as practitioners, can we participate in that in a way that doesn't add to that energetic landscape. So can I ask for people to chime in if they want? I'm very curious, please.
Thank you so much for this ongoing talk. As someone who's interested in animal behavior, I think about aggression a fair amount. So having been practicing Buddhism for that long, and the scientist part of me thinks about a definition of aggression that I like, which is using force or threat to make someone do something against their will and not for their own good. And so I like that one, and it helps me think about if I'm working with dogs, which I do, kind of an intellectual way of thinking about what I'm doing with them. But the Buddhist part that I also like is just welcoming in the feeling that usually it's that I feel scared about something, and that's where maybe the destructive emotion would come next. And it's really helpful for me just to, not the intellectual part, but just the feeling of welcoming in the fear and just sitting with it and letting it kind of immerse me, just so that it, like befriending it. So I find those two things helpful, although the latter have sort of a stronger connection with the feeling of than the former, which is more an intellectual way of thinking about it. So those are just sort of two ways that I think about that.
Yeah, I appreciate that you're willing to go with the feeling, because I think that is not so easy for a lot of people. They emotionally can go to this place, or intellectually, it's like, I don't want to feel this way. I do not want to feel this way. So this feeling of, particularly, if something is happening to you or to me, and if I can stop for a second, think, wow, how is this landing in my body? Like, is my stomach clenching? Did I start sweating? So I'm actually paying attention to the cues in my body to help support the idea that there's some legitimacy to how I'm feeling, rather than something is happening, I'm not going to go there, which then cages it, I think. So I really do appreciate that is something that you're like going back and forth, or that you're comfortable with the emotional part and how it reacts. Yeah. And it is, I enjoy dogs a lot, and I often think, there's not a bad dog, there's a bad owner. Yeah. And for some reasons, Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? Please.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking, there's Kristen Knapp, I think it's her name. It's this like Buddhist psychologist, and she talks a lot about self-compassion. And I think that's something I do when I get, for a variety of reasons. I have a lot of challenges in relationships and whatnot. My partner was dying, I was grieving, it was intense. But, so anyway, basically how it works is if I'm feeling any kind of way, I just give myself some grace and say, okay, of course you feel this way, given the circumstances, or at least it's understandable that I feel that way. And that really lightens me up to be a little bit less like inflexible, rigid with other people. It kind of softens everything. And so I found that to be really helpful, especially in political discussions, because that goes sideways in every direction possible in my friend group. So
yeah.
Thank
you. One question that I want to ask, not to you necessarily, but in this topic, is like, when you are when you're like, can I love myself? Can I have compassion for myself? It can be really helpful to then say to yourself, do I believe that? So you're even going a little deeper. There's this negative voice that we often have, and it's like, intellectually, I'm going to be nice to myself. And then it can be very helpful to then say, So if I'm nice to myself, do I really believe that I deserve that?
Yeah. And
So-
act like you believe it. Acknowledge
Yeah. Yeah. So it kind of that asking those questions gets to the heart of the matter faster, I think. You were going to say something.
Yes, I want, this is going to sound a lot, I want to thank you for bringing up the subject of thoughts I would prefer I didn't have. But I do have them. But I also know that they go away. They may come back, but they go away. And I'm grateful that they go away, but I'm also grateful for the other thoughts that come up. I'm grateful that I don't act on those negative thoughts. I may sometimes think about what I can do about making the world better so that those thoughts don't get prompted. But one of the things I've learned by coming here for so many years is that those thoughts are temporary and you don't have to act on them. And you don't have to blame yourself for having those thoughts. As I learned from another speaker here many, many years ago, the past doesn't get any better than it was. So why blame yourself for it?
Thank you for that. Yeah. That's a sweet thing to take away. Yeah. I mean, as many of us in this room understand, one of the very most important things that we learn as a result of studying Buddhism is that things change. And if we pause, then the next thing will happen. Yeah. So thank you. Please.
Thank you for your talk. It's really stirring up a lot, and it made me think of a few things. One is my dad was a prisoner of war in World War II, and I saw a film that depicted the whole situation that he was in as a prisoner of war, Japanese in a prison camp, and I found myself in the film being so angry at this Japanese war officer that was commanding people to be killed and captured and all this stuff. And my first thought was, somebody killed him. You know, and that, frankly, that I get that first thought bubble when I feel like I'm under attack by scary people who are in power. So it's good to think about, like, of course, you know, that war feeling is in all of us, you know, that it arises, you know. And then it made me think about what's the subtlety, the difference between war and protest. So I'm a teacher. I was just involved in the teacher strike, which is kind of a war against our school district. We were on the opposing sides, and we were literally shouting, you know, chanting against each other. There were no weapons involved. We weren't trying to do physical harm, but it was unrest, and it was a lot of discomfort. And then maybe even sort of hone in on, like, some of the chants. Some of the chants were just, you know, we want fairness and rights. But some of them were attacking the superintendent and being kind of, you know, harmful speech. So anyway, I wonder what your thoughts are on that, like the difference between war and protest and speaking up for good.
Yeah, before I answer that question, I really appreciate that you are willing to say the reaction for violence is part of my human reaction. Mm-hmm. So I think as a starting place, I think it's really important for us to realize that we have this amazing range of reactions, feelings, how we receive things, and having a reaction like, oh, I would like to harm that person. It's a reaction, and it might be a completely reasonable thing in that situation. So it's allowing the mind to do what it does, create thoughts. It's how we take that energy and what we do with that energy that becomes really important. Which then leads me to your second thing, like the difference between war and protest. I think probably just on a very gross level, it's exactly what you just said. If all of you got guns in the protest and then started shooting them and terrorizing people, That's like the level of war. However, that we know that, but when you're targeting in a protest individuals and you want to cause them harm, it just doesn't feel very good. Mm-hmm. It is one thing to all be singing together and chanting that we want health benefits. It's another thing to say we want something bad to happen to the superintendent. And I think our psyche, our emotional world really understands the difference that those two things cause in us. And one is, I believe in this. I want better health care. The other one is kind of seductive and uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I think that the being aware of these emotions and not going down the seductive, uncomfortable route is really important for us. And I think if we're in touch, we kind of know it. We know when we're going down that path. And I think it can be quite seductive. Particularly in groups. So it doesn't exactly answer your question, but I think...
it's nice.
Yeah.
I like that idea that it's seductive. And there's a power in it. There's an energy, a really intense energy in that, in that feeling and feeling.
Yeah.
It's like really that aggression, that question.
And I think that, it's very helpful to us, I think, to think about the first thing you said, which is that energy exists within us, and it can be extremely powerful and positive, because you can take that energy of aggression, and not use it as aggressive to somebody else. You can use it to get you out to protest, to get you out to change things, to get you out to motivate other people. So it can be very powerful energy, which can be used very well. So it's not the energy that is a bad thing in us or seductive. It's the using it in this kind of very insidious, destructive way. Thank you.
Mary, I have a question.
Please.
It's Christian.
Hi, Christian.
Hi. So, Mary, thank you for the talk. And what it brings to mind for me is kind of an old formula that I heard for meeting each moment in the most compassionate way, or the way with the most loving kindness and wisdom, in order to move to the next step, in order to make progress. And in particular, it's a much smaller deal than a war in the Middle East, but I have a new neighbor in this place that I spend my winter, and he plays really, really loud music, and I knew that the meditation was coming up this morning, and I could feel myself beginning to sort of panic, like, as a Buddhist, I should be able to deal with this, even if someone's playing loud music, I should be able to just ignore it. And in the end, I ended up simply closing my doors and turning on the air conditioning because it's hot here, and I can't really hear him. But I think that I think what has improved for me in the past 7 or 8 years that I've been sitting is that I become aware of my emotions much more quickly than I did before, and I have a chance to use the wisdom and loving kindness to come up with the appropriate response. But the problem for me often is coming up with that appropriate response that gets a response that is at least in part solving the problem for me. Anyway, if you have anything you can say about that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, the first thing I would say is you started out by saying, as a Buddhist practitioner, you should blah, blah, blah. And I think when we hear that language applied either to ourselves or to another person, that's a like warning, 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 warning. That feeling like I should be means that you're not actually paying attention to what's happening. And because your habit patterns or your like intellectual overlay is stuffing down what actually is happening. So I think that if you can treat your reality, which is in your example, the loud music, as it's happening, what do I need to do about it? Rather than I should be blah, blah, blah. That gets us pretty far. And I think that starts unraveling the second part of your question. So it's maybe a little less intellectual and a little more sensory.
Thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Good luck with the music.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
And you have.
I was thinking about the wisdom of what if we consider through the fires of destruction, it seeds opportunities for growth and human endeavor and development. As we have the choice to respond to the emotions that arise, as you both mentioned and brought up, and recognizing how we feel towards them. And when we experience destruction, we have an opportunity to show up with more compassion and love and kindness and understanding, and recognize that we don't have to respond with destruction, and how we show up as we go through the human evolution and the cycles of time, which are great beyond the current moment of what we're currently experiencing, recognizing that everything is temporary and seeing opportunities to heal and transform and to show up with more love in that process, which has a greater impact to transform and heal the world.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. What came up for me, your reflection on your earlier life with the homophobic attack. I've lived here in California now for 50 years, and luckily never in San Francisco, but once in Napa and once in the Russian River years ago. My then boyfriend and two gay women friends of ours were coming back from the beach, and two or three people in a pickup truck threw beer cans at us and called us effing faggots. And then one time in Napa, a couple of servicemen saw the rainbow stripe on the back of my pickup truck and called my friend Regina and I the same thing. And initially I felt fear and anger, but after I felt those things, I felt sad for them, that they're carrying around that kind of just aura, I actually cried. I was very sad. And then another incident that came up was about Matthew Shepard years ago. And I still cry when I think about that, how horrible that was. They had a healing service around that at Holy Redeemer Church in Castro. I went to that, cried a lot. But afterward, Matthew Shepard's parents were able to forgive those guys that beat and killed their son. And I thought that was a really beautiful, difficult but beautiful thing to hear about and to hold. Yeah.
I hope we all can get to that place.
Yeah. May it be so. Yeah, I think the your description, it's possible to go through this range of emotion, which is when somebody says that to you, you feel hurt and anger, which is a destructive emotion. Sadness is not a destructive emotion. And sadness, we can meet sadness and grieving, and they're not kleshas. So they don't cause negative karma. So that's interesting too, is that if we can move with the experience we're having, then it doesn't get twisted up in this ball and remain. It actually can be, their energy can be released. And that's, as I say, this is not so easy. I think many of us have stayed because of particular instances in hurt and anger. Or hurt maybe, but anger and fear. And those can cause a lot of, they're hard to get out of once we've really put them on as armor. Please.
So whenever thinking about war, to jump to another part of India, I always think about the Bhagavad Gita, and just to set the stage for people who might be unfamiliar with it. So the premise of the story is that there's this great war that's happening between Dharma and Adharma.
Mm-hmm.
And Arjuna is this great warrior, and he is going to fight, and he looks across the field and he sees on the other side kinspeople to him and people that he's known and respected who are basically on the demonic adharmic side. And so he collapses on the battlefield and says, I can't fight these people. How could I do this? I can't do this. And his charioteer reveals himself to be Krishna, supreme form of Godhead, right? And has this whole discussion, which is what the Bhagavad Gita is, with Arjuna about how to fight in the war on the side of Dharma without falling into what I feel like you've been talking about, the seductive path of the negative emotions. And it's really, really fascinating because some people think Bhagavad Gita is just metaphorical and just symbolic. And other people think it's also practical. But what the teaching is about is who are you internally while you are doing any of these actions, right? If this is a time where if you do not act, Dharma will be crushed by Adharma, right? And you're a warrior and it's your duty to be a warrior. How are you a warrior? And the teaching is to be basically as pure inside, as far as centered in the values of justice, but justice not as revenge, justice as trying to serve Dharma, right? It's just really interesting.
And that comes back to like this idea of Manjushri and his sword.
Yes.
So Manjushri is using a sword. He's using wisdom with a very pure heart.
Yes.
And it can be cutting. However, there's not the spin
right.
of negativity or destructive emotion.
Yeah.
So we're not saying that action cutting with a sword is a bad thing. Sometimes it's the most appropriate thing. What I'm proposing is that, as you just said, if we're doing it with a pure heart, which is tricky,
yes.
but if we're doing it with a pure heart, then then it's an appropriate action rather than a destructive action. And that discernment is what you all do here every Sunday for 30 minutes together, is getting to this place of pure heart. Thank you very much. There's there's this thing that Pema Chödrön says that when emotion grabs you, if you can remember to become embodied, present, and then kind, if you can move through those things, embodied, present, and kind, it will support you in your language to this pure heart. And there's another practice that has been very helpful for me when I'm teaching people that aren't Buddhists, that are don't know anything about Buddhism. It's called the stop practice. And it's easy to remember. And it's, so if a big emotion is coming your way, or if something's happening, you remember this, because often when something's coming our way, we forget. So it's, the stop is stop, take a breath. So you're creating that pause, take a breath, observe what's happening in your body, and then proceed. Please.
Something that recently came for me in meditation as well, when dealing with challenging situations, after discussion with my mother, is to practice ambivalence, and recognize your resilience and presence, and just sort of detaching from the emotion and observing, practicing everything that you just mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's can be very helpful to have something in our mind that reminds us, because as humans we forget. Years and years and years of practice, and we forget.
We're designed to forget.
Yes, we are. And then I have a teacher in the Zen tradition, and I remember a Dharma talk. We were talking about emotions a long time ago, and I've kept this in my kind of heart. And one of the things she said was, she just said, you get to a point where you're just like thinking, can I stand it? Can I just stand it? Can I stand this strong emotion? And this stop practice, or the like embodied, present, and kind, allows us, I think, to be able to stand things, because we're taking it kind of a little bit at a time. It slows the process down. Becomes like just one more breath. Just one more breath. So I appreciate the ability to discuss this all with you and share your wisdom in this beautiful space. It's really lovely here. It feels wonderful. So thank you for your bravery for coming the first time. It takes a lot of courage, I think.
I was going to say thank you for being so vulnerable in what you shared with us, because sometimes in these Dharma talks it stays theoretical, but you got really personal, and that was really brave of you. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah, well, we're all friends here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Announcements. Do we have announcements? Do we have a host?
I'm your host. Please, we invite you to stay and enjoy the company of the Sangha. There's snacks out in the other room, and tea, and when you're done with your teacups, just put them in the sink and I'll take care of them. I'll also be passing around the Dana bowl. It's through your generosity that we're able to pay for the rental of the space, honorarium for our teachers. Also, your donations go toward our monthly dinner at Larkin Street Youth Services that we started up again. We had to delay it for a while during the pandemic. Also, it goes to scholarships for our retreats, and we have our 5-day silent retreat coming up in April 12th Is it
5th to 19th.
15th to 19th.
15th to 19th, up at Vajrapani, or down in Vajrapani. And our teacher is Sean Oakes, who spoke last week. And we'll be speaking once again, one more time before we have a fall weekend retreat. And this retreat in the spring really provides the participants with an opportunity to deepen their practice. And there's such power and strength in observing long periods of silence. And this also gives you the opportunity to just let the world be the world for 5 days. And believe me, I've done it before, and when you come back out of it, nothing much has changed. It's just been all the same stuff. So anyway, a suggested donation of $10 to $20, but anything that you can contribute helps to keep this whole enterprise going. At 12:30, after our regular session here, oftentimes people meet at the front of the center and go out to lunch. Yes. Plus, I have another. Last June, GBF gave me the opportunity to share both my passion with Shakespeare and the Dharma in a talk that I gave, appropriately enough, called Shakespeare Dharma. And I got it was so well received that I decided to work on it more. And I'm going to be doing my Shakespeare Dharma talk at Bird and Beckett Books and Records in Glen Park. If you've never been there, it's just a wonderful little oasis of beatness in Glen Park. I'll leave a flyer out on the table out there if you want to take down any information. I'll also be returning for Shakespeare Dharma Part 2 over Memorial Day weekend here. It'll be a talk more designed specifically for the GBF community. And I guess that's it, yes.
Thank you, Matthew. Anyone else? Anyone else?
It's Grisha. Just a reminder that Jeff, the Memorial Life Celebration for Jeff, who was the longtime president of our Sangha, is March 21st. I believe at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. If you're on the mailing list, you'll get it. But yeah.
And is that the Unitarian Chief?
Yeah, up on
Franklin. Right? Yeah. Anyone else? Would you like to do a dedication of merit?
I'd love to give a dedication of merit.
Let's gather in a circle.
You're welcome.
Watch the wires.
Awesome, Jack.
By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.